I wanted to share one of my saddest life stories with you in today's video. It is about a girl who I dated way back in time during my time in Southeast Asia. This story is very sad, yet it taught me so much about life, so much about people, and it taught me so much about how trauma affects a person's psychology. Let's get started with this story. This is something very personal, and I thought twice about sharing it, so I'm careful about the information that I give away. I met this girl, and I'll never forget how I met her. It happened so naturally. There was no forcing or anything. It was just a force of nature, how everything unfolded. Well, it didn't unfold completely, but at least during the early stages, it really evolved naturally, and that's really important. I met this girl, very feminine girl. When I met her, she was a virgin. Obviously, that's very attractive to a guy who wants to date for the long term. That's exactly who we are looking for. And one thing I want to add here, because a lot of guys are like, hey, this girl is so difficult. It takes weeks or months for me just to get her out on a date. That is a good thing. If a girl is very conservative, if a girl thinks twice before dating a guy, this is a very good characteristic, because women who say yes easily when it comes to dates, when it comes to intimacy, it's not so good. If you're looking to date for the long term, that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about dating for the short term. Long-term dating is very different. It involves more patience, it involves more work, perseverance. That's what it takes. It was not so easy to communicate. Her English was good, but it was not, extremely good. Anyway, we had enough to talk about, and my goal was to help her improve her English. We kind of achieved that over time. We met many times during a period of probably 2 to 3 months, and it was a lot of fun. We went out, we went to the amusement park, had a lot of fun. We went to the rainforest, we did simple things. We went shopping. We went to just walk around in a park, just very simple things. And I appreciate that, because for me, in order to have fun, I don't need to spend a lot of money. I don't need the most lavish thing. I don't need that. And she also did not need that. So we were on the same page. That was very, very important. Then there was a time when I thought to myself, look, this girl is great. And by the way, whenever we went out, I had almost no chance to pay the bills. Like, she insisted to pay for almost everything we did. I didn't like that, because as a man, I want to pay for a good chunk of what we do. I appreciate the initiative. Very few women have the initiative, especially in Asia. Very rare that you find a girl who actually offers you something for free. Very rare, especially when it comes to bills. And she always initiated it. She said, hey, let me pay for this. Or she actually paid for it, and she was like, no, it's fine, don't worry about it. And I appreciated that, right? She was a genuinely nice person. That was really important to me back then. I appreciated that so much. Then there was a time when I was like, hey, it's time for us to progress to the next step, which was just a little bit of romance, a little bit more romance, if you will. Because there was literally no kissing. There was no real intimacy going on, nothing. It was just the starting phase, the getting to know each other phase. And that was something where I felt like, okay, we've been patient, really important. She was a virgin, I appreciate that. Now it's time to move on to the next step. And then I felt resentment. There was resentment coming from her. I didn't know what it was or why she acted the way she did. I didn't understand it back then. I asked myself, what's wrong with her? We had this great time together. We had so many commonalities. We enjoyed the simple things together. And it was just, it felt right. Everything felt right, except for proceeding to the next step. And now you might think, well, nothing was right, nothing felt right if you didn't manage to get to the next step. And that is true. However, there was a reason for all of this. Her parents, her whole family, not just her parents, her whole family. She received a lot of pressure from the outside world, from her family, from her inner circle about me, because they were like, hey, look at this foreigner, he's here. We don't know how much longer he will be here for. He wants to date our daughter. We don't know anything about him. And then her uncle told her, look, foreigners, they come and go quickly. He might not be here tomorrow, could be gone. That's what her uncle told her. Everybody in her family told her not to date me. You know how it is, you're young, you are a virgin. I was 19 years old back then, 19 years old. And at that age, the amount of feedback that you get, and if it's so negative, you almost have no chance to say yes to the person you want to date. She still lived with her mother, and it was just difficult for her to, do certain things because she had to ask for her mother's permission. And that's usually a good thing. If the daughter respects the mother, that is very important. It sounds like a really good person. However, there is a time when you have to make your own decisions. It is important to get the approval from your parents, especially if you are from a conservative family like she was. But then there was a time, and her uncle, and I just learned about this recently, like a few years ago. I didn't learn about this once it happened. No. It took years for me to get this information. I didn't know it back then. I didn't know what the problem was. Now I know. I didn't know it back then. And so what actually happened to her, and that was why she rejected me, was the fact that her uncle sexually abused her from a very early age on. And once I heard that, I was like, makes perfect sense. Her uncle tried to protect his victim because he still had his victim. And in his uncle's mind, his uncle thought that every guy's like him. It's a very common human trait. We all think that people think like us, or we want people to think like us. We reject different thinking, different thoughts, different mindsets. We reject it. We only surround ourselves with people who are very similar to us. If you really think about it, it's crazy, because her uncle, a guy who sexually abused her, should be the last person to tell her anything about relationships, about who to be with, what to do in life. He was the last person to tell her anything, yet he had the most control, he had the most of everything. He was just right there with her. And that changed everything, because on her own she was not strong enough to get out of this. And it's trauma. It's trauma. She was scared that what her uncle did to her would happen to her again. That's also one of the reasons why she rejected me. It's not just about her family, not wanting to be with a foreigner, because after time, because they saw, hey, she's seeing him all the time and he seems to be a nice guy, maybe we should open up to him. So there was a little bit of xenophobia, if you will. At the same time, she was not able to do it because of her childhood trauma. She got sexually abused by her uncle, and that had a drastic negative impact on her. That's just what happened. And I learned that years later. I didn't know what was going on back then. I felt like it's all my fault. I did something wrong. Then the following thing happened. She went out there, she started a relationship with the worst guy possible, had a kid with him just to separate a few years later, because she learned that the guy she was with had multiple women. It's just really bad what happened. It's not what should have happened. I also made a really bad choice. The person I was with after I had met that girl was the worst person I could have chosen, or one of the worst persons I could have chosen. I chose a girl who had a kid who was years older than me. I made a very poor choice myself. Sometimes in life things just don't work out. Patience is super important. If you cannot be patient, you are doomed to make really dumb mistakes, which are difficult to correct. So yes, this is one of the saddest stories of my life. Maybe the fault wasn't completely on my side. I could have been more patient and waited for her to open up, but it did not happen. You know how it is as a guy. You try and try and try, but you're being rejected. And if you're being rejected all the time, you feel like, hey, what am I doing here? I'm not wanted. It's time for me to back off. So I backed off. Because I backed off, she also backed off. Even though months later, when I was already together with somebody, she actually asked me if I wanted to move in with her. She made the move to leave her family, went to study in a different country. Then we talked again, but I already told her I am with somebody. That was a problem, and this is how it unfolded. We both made poor decisions. You can clearly see how trauma affects a person. The people who are the least credible, the people who should mind their own business, are oftentimes the people who want to influence you the most. What do you think about this specific experience? And what is the saddest experience of your life? Leave a comment below and let us know. Consider subscribing if you haven't already. I'm uploading new videos on digital nomad locations, travel updates, and investment advice several times a week right now. And if you got some more time left, check out these videos.